looking at basic frame 3 and test GUI 3, if we run the code, we can see that we have the buttons, and then also in the meantime, I've added a label and a text field. They're just other components. How to use them, you can look it up. And I've added to the to this frame. However, this isn't really how I want to organize it. I kind of want to organize it so there's a label and then the text field, and then I have my buttons underneath it. Well, I can't really have it underneath it. I could, make it such that it's the exact size that I want, such that it has this in the way that I want it. But if I make it any bigger, it doesn't follow that layout. So that kind of limits how my program will be used. And so there are two things that help me to organize these components. First of all are the containers. So we have our JPanel, scroll panel, all these things. I'm going to look primarily at JPanel just to demonstrate how containers can work. And so the other thing that is needed are the layouts. So each container can have a different way of it being organized. So we're going to create two JPanels. We're going to create a button panel, and we're going to create a text panel. The button panel, we're going to put the two buttons in, and we're going to put the text label and the text field into those panels. So I'm going to create a panel. So what was it called? Button panel. So I have button panel equals new JPanel. And then I'm going to add these things to my panels instead. So I'm going to say button panel dot add, because it is a container just like a frame. I'm going to add the click button, and I'm going to say button panel dot add click button too. So instead of adding it directly onto the on the frame, I'm going to put it onto the panel. So this is like if you were to not just throw your shoe into your room, but to put your shoe in a shoebox before putting it in the room. That way it can be a little bit more organized. Similarly, I'm going to have a new text panel, and I'm going to add the text panels, the text components to the text panel. Yes, I'm copying and pasting. It's okay. And in this case, I've added my components to my panels, but I haven't put my panels into the frame. So again, I would say instead of saying this dot add buttons, I would say this dot add. So I want the text panel first. So add text panel, and then this dot add. And it's not going to work out entirely the way I want it to, and that's okay, because we'll figure out how this runs. So if I go back to test GUI 3, I'm going to run this code. And here I have basically the same thing, but notice how it's different. Instead of having everything onto its own lines, I now have these containers as kind of my limits. So it does kind of shrink a little. It doesn't look quite as nice, but technically I could also set the limit of how big or minimum size of my frame. How you do that, again, look on Google. And so how exactly do I want it? Well, maybe I want these to have a slightly different layout. Maybe I want the text and the text box. Maybe I want the text box right above these two, and then my label on the right of everything. So I could technically say that the layout that I'm going to use, well, which one do I want to use? I'm not entirely sure. So let's take a look at what layouts are available for me. And if I take a look, that there are a lot of different layouts that are available for me. Flow layout is kind of like the default layout. Basically, it flows according to the size of the container. So then we have pictures and some demonstration code to demonstrate each of the layouts. Yeah, and so there, use it as you like. There's demonstration code. You should be able to use it now. The way that they've organized the code would be slightly different. So they create the buttons, and they declare and initialize the buttons in the same place, and then they add it to the panel. For us, we're doing it slightly different. We're declaring our components up here, including our panels, and then we're initializing them inside our constructor method. This is important because we're going to be using these components in for the listener later on, and that's our next step, actually. And so I kind of don't like this because, just because. So for text panel, actually, I'm going to I want to organize it differently. For my layout, instead of having a flow layout, I kind of like the border layout. Or yeah, so I'm gonna set this, instead of new flow layout, I'm gonna say new border layout. And so how do I use border layout? Well, I can add different components, but I need to place it using some constants for border layout. So as an example, instead of my text panel, I'm not going to have the text field. I'm not going to have the display text label. I'm just going to keep it on the side. And then so for this one, I'm going to add the text panel in the border layout dot center, I believe. Is it RE or ER? ER. I'm gonna put the display text on the right side. So this dot add display text label, and then to add on the right side, I need to say it's on the border layout east. So border layout east, and then I'm gonna add the button panel to the south. So border layout dot south. How does this look? Well, let's test it out. So compile, go back to test, and let's run this, and we can see that it looks a bit scuffed, but we can see that it's organized in a separate way. Okay, so this might not really be the way that I want it to be organized, but the idea is you can play with different layouts. So for example, in this case, if I look at the calculator, for the arrangement of these buttons, I'm probably looking at a grid layout. For the organization of here, I probably would be using a J-tabbed pane. And then here, I would probably have maybe a flow layout. It doesn't seem like it's a flow layout. you can see that there's like different components here, right? Oh, well, there's different components here. So one showing this, another showing that. So that could be another layout. Maybe it could also be a grid layout still, a grid of 1 by however many. And so again, it's up to you to take a look at the different layouts that you want and then kind of implement it that way.